she spoke up, was told to pack up, and now she is luring up. My next guest says that she was fired for speaking at Tea Party rallies. Former Florida Assistant State Attorney Chris Ann Hall joins you right now. We called her former boss, Skip Jarvis. He declined to comment, or to come on. He did comment, actually. We're going to get that shortly, but he wouldn't come on. Anyway, Chris, what happened here?
Well, I've been working for the state attorney's office for about 10 years, but I took a break from 2007 to 2009 and got the opportunity to work for a constitutional law firm in Seminole. When I came back to the state attorney's office, it got around to the general public that I had this background in constitutional law. It's not a very common background where I live, so groups started asking me to come and speak to them on the Constitution. I am a constitutional originalist. I am also a fan of American revolutionary history, and I like to teach people what I know about what our founding fathers went through and why we have the Constitution that we have. I started, my first speech was to the Suwannee County Republican Executive Committee, and then after that it just sort of spread out.
By the way, were you paid for these speeches?
Oh, no,
Okay,
no,
so there was no issue of remuneration.
I think it's my duty to teach people.
Your boss was upset that you did it. As a government worker or a state worker or what?
Well, I spoke at a tax rally on April 15th and then spoke on the local news talk radio station, 96.5, advocating Bill McCullum's lawsuit against the Health Care Act from a constitutional perspective. And then shortly after that, I received an email from Mr. Jarvis telling me that he had received a complaint from someone that I was using his office to legitimize right-wing fringe groups, and told me that I could not have the state of Florida as my client and advocate for smaller government and less spending at the same time.
Well, so we're talking about Skip Jarvis, your boss. Did you ever email him, Chris Ann, that you were going to speak to any of these groups, or give him a heads up?
Well, no, I didn't, but my direct supervisor knew, because I had to request leave time for all of this. So I took my own personal leave time. So did you quit, or were you fired? What happened? He gave me an ultimatum. In the original emails he sent me, he said it didn't matter what I thought my position was. The order was to cease and desist associating myself with these groups or these rallies, and that I had to choose between speaking and working for him. I went and talked to a constitutional law attorney in Gainesville, Florida, by the name of Gary Edinger, just to make sure I wasn't missing something. And he said I wasn't missing anything, and wrote Mr. Jarvis a letter explaining the law to him and requesting that he retract his demand. And Mr. Jarvis wrote a letter back to my attorney telling him that I worked at his pleasure. He could hire me and fire me as he pleased, and I had a choice to make. I could choose to speak, or I could choose to work for him.
Well, that's kind of what he said in response to this. Here's what Mr. Jarvis said exactly.
Would I like to have her back, the old Chris Ann, before she wanted to become the next Sarah Palin? I would love to have the old Chris Ann back.
What do you think of that?
I don't think that I'm worthy to be called Sarah Palin, but in spite of how he meant it to be, I take that as a compliment. I don't have an agenda. My goal is to make sure that people know what I know, because I really, really believe that if people knew what I knew about our history and about our Constitution, they'd become just as passionate as I am about this, and we could spark a fire across this country.
Well, Chris Ann, is there anything, I'm trying to give the benefit of the doubt here, is there anything in your office or that it does, or in your job, or that you do, or did, that would be at all compromised by an association with the Tea Party or anything like that?
No, sir, and when I spoke, I never spoke about any cases.
What was your job?
I'm a prosecutor. I was prosecuting
so you argue on behalf of the
felonies.
state. You argue on behalf of the state.
Right.
So he's saying.
So
he's saying that when you're with Tea Parties, for example, they don't much like the state or state government. So there's an inherent conflict.
Well, his point was that because I was speaking at Tea Parties, I was somehow, therefore, for smaller government and less spending, and that idea is contrary to the state of Florida. But, you know, our own governor ran on that very platform, so I'm not quite sure how
very good point.
Advocating for smaller government and less spending could be contrary to the state of Florida.
Well, he might have messed with the wrong person, someone who's an expert in constitutional law, but we'll see how it goes. Chris Ann, thank you very much. And Mr. Jarvis, wherever you are, we'd love to have you.